Ashwani. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Apprenticeship Network, and I have the great privilege of moderating this session today, where we'll be looking at apprenticeships, alliances, and partnerships. We know that these are essential to successful delivery of apprenticeships, to the shaping of the system, to ensuring that we can bring partners and stakeholders to work together to create an enabling environment. We will be looking at different examples from several different countries. I'm very pleased to have such a global panel, and I look forward to their contribution, and I'm sure you will look forward to hearing from our panel this morning as to how apprenticeship systems are operating in different countries, different levels of governance, issues of coordination, financing, stakeholder participation and engagement, and ensuring that we can collectively address the needs of the system, challenges, gaps, and opportunities. We've seen throughout the last 4 days of the conference these kinds of discussions addressing various elements of the skills system. And today we're specifically looking at this need to take policy, which is generally developed at national level. There's also the global aspect of policy development relating to apprenticeships. And we'll hear from representatives of the European Commission, the International Labour Organization. But we also need to understand how these policies devolve into national approaches and translate into delivery at a local level. The role of the private sector is key to ensure that the practical elements of apprenticeship training can roll out, recruitment of learners, training, monitoring, delivery of training, and we look forward to hearing from panelists who represent the private sector, and we will review existing coalitions, national alliances, and networks, and how these all contribute to quality work-based learning, as well as building and strengthening apprenticeship systems within communities, industry, and countries at large. I'm very honored to have Mr. Norbert Scherbel from the European Commission, who will speak to the role of systemic cooperation, networks, the work that the European Commission is doing, Mr. Ashwani Agarwal, who will talk about the work of the International Labour Organization, how this approach is happening at a global level, what is happening, there's some important developments, and what this means for countries. Paul Warner from the AELP in the UK is also present, and he will speak about the role of independent training providers. What can the provider side contribute to quality apprenticeship delivery, and how they work effectively with governments, states, and employers and learners. Also very honored to have Gary Workman, who is the Executive Director of the Apprenticeship Employment Network and leads the Global Apprenticeship Network in Australia, along with Cameron Baker, who is the Apprenticeship Commissioner for the state of Victoria in Australia. And they will speak to us about the industry and employer perspective, innovative solutions on how to build alliances to promote apprenticeships. Very pleased to have Megan Yates from Ireland, who is a youth leader. She's a youth champion. She's a gold medal winner from Kazan. And Megan is going to share some of her experiences in the logistics side, what it's meant to be doing this apprenticeship, how it has contributed to her career development. And finally, a video from Maria Dalma, who is from Costa Rica, the GAN network in Costa Rica, the employer organization UCAEP. And because of the time difference, Maria can't join us live, so she will come via video and give us an employer perspective and an industry perspective. We're very, very pleased to have such an illustrious and knowledgeable panel join us. Just in terms of housekeeping, there will be simultaneous translation between English and Chinese. So please feel free, those of you who are joining virtually, to click on the translation globe on your screen and choose the language that suits you. And when we have Q&A, we would like to hear from the audience. So please use the Q&A function in the Zoom screen and not the chat function. I'm going to hand over now to our very first speaker, and that is Norbert Scherbel. Norbert, can you tell us what is happening within the European Commission relating to the role of partnerships, collaboration, and cooperation on vocational education and apprenticeship-related initiatives?
Thank you, Nazrin, and I feel privileged to start off and on behalf of the European Commission to say a bit something about what we do at the European level. I think also thanks to WorldSkills to have put this topic on the agenda, because I think it is important. Let me explain why. My first point is we have a huge variety of, call it networks, coalitions, alliances. For me, the name doesn't count, at all levels, local, regional level, national level, transnational, cross-border. So, I mean, the variety is there. We have started, and if you allow me, in 2013 already to have alliance at European level, the European Alliance for Apprenticeship, which is mainly a network and an alliance, as the word says, at the time when the youth unemployment in some countries in southern parts of Europe was 40-50% high. And since we know that apprenticeship is a very successful tool in the transition from school to, let's say, from school to work, that's why we have created this alliance at that time. And we have, of course, many objectives. It's the supply, it's the quality, it's the image, it's the mobility. And the alliance is still growing. We have more than, 36 countries. Now Israel has even joined, so we even go beyond. I don't want to compete with the Global Apprenticeship Network, but we have also now Israel part of the alliance, but also more than 360 individual organizations joining this alliance. Now, coming back to the topic of today, because last year, because of COVID, we thought we need to renew it. And one key objective is these national or alliances and partnerships. So what we have done is we have done a survey among the alliance members, and to our surprise, we have received quite some interesting responses. This is not the full picture, but we have around 30 coalitions identified in Europe, and 18 are at national level, 8 at regional, and 6 at local level. And what was also so interesting to see who are the partners, there's a huge variety again. Social partners, employers, and trade unions are in most cases part of these networks. Now, why I'm explaining that, as I said, it's not a full picture, but it is a good starting point, because as I said, one of our objectives now is that we work more closely with what exists, and that we once a year bring all these local, regional, national partnerships together, and together with the ILO, I would say even at international level, to see and to learn from each other. For me, and I can stop here, we have also a European framework for quality and effective apprenticeships. And just to say that the partnership approach is a key principle, the involvement of all key partners on a fair and equitable partnership with an inclusive, let's say, structured and transparent dialogue. I stop here, and of course I can send around, we can disseminate the first results of the survey, but as I said, it's only a starting point.
Fantastic. Norbert, I think you've really set the scene, and I like what you spoke about, this constructive and inclusive transparent dialogue. I think it's such an important aspect of partnerships and alliances to engage deeply and meaningfully to shape the system. It's not just at the surface. It's not done for compliance purposes or ticking a box. It's actually about delivery of quality apprenticeships and impacting people's lives, young and older apprentices. So thank you so much for setting that scene, Norbert. I'm very grateful to you, and we'll come back to you shortly for another round. Let me move now to Ashwani Agarwal from the ILO. Ashwani, Norbert has shared what is happening at a European level and some of the countries within the continent, and now even outside of the former European continent. Exciting to see the interest and growth. Perhaps you can position what is happening on apprenticeship developments at a global level. And we'd be also keen if you could quickly share with us the work being done on the global standard for apprenticeships. I know that work you're busy with it. It's going to intensify in the year to come. So we look forward to hearing from you, Ashwani. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nazreen, and thanks to Norbert also, who set the scene by uh, uh, informing what Europe is doing. And as all of us know, there are many countries in Europe which are the leading countries for the apprenticeship system, and the world over looks forward to the Europe's experience. And we are very thankful to the European Commission and the team led by Norbert. They have done excellent work. And I think many of the things will be explained in the next session also. But let's first greet all the participants from ILO Switzerland, and also share my experience when we received a letter from president. I'm not telling the name of the country. President of the country requested ILO to provide advice on reforming its skills development system. It is a poor country, but still invested huge amounts of money by taking multi-million dollars of loans from Development Bank in improving its skill system. But unfortunately, the problem, despite all those investments, the skills mismatch was still increasing. And it was hampering the economic growth and creation of jobs in the country. So everyone was quite concerned what's happening. And the background was, as usual, that before they started investing, their training centers were in very bad conditions with outdated equipment and building. So they thought this is the way. First, the thing is that they must improve their facilities, training infrastructure. But then we all know the world of work is changing so fast. And the equipment, whatever they invest, they got outdated very fast, sometimes even before the completion of the project. And we all know this is a reason that countries cannot afford to keep on investing. After every 5 years, huge amounts of money in modernizing those training institutions. They don't have the money, basically. And then it's not bringing the results. And the bigger problem is that the similar situation exists in many countries. It's not solely of one country. You go across the world and you find the same thing, same strategy, and same strategy doesn't work. So this makes policymakers and experts around the world rethink about other options that can provide demand-driven skills as well as reduced unit cost of the training. And they realized that a good option was always available. It's not a new option, it was always available, the apprenticeships, the centuries-old tradition. A training model which brings world of work and world of learning together, which is so crucial, the fundamental condition for developing demand-driven skills, and that too at a much lower unit cost. So most countries in the world today are refocusing on strengthening their apprenticeship system. As Norbert has mentioned, European Council has come up with already a recommendation on quality and effective apprenticeships. The G20 group of countries, which are the leading countries for the countries in the world, they have also come up with the recommendation of the quality apprenticeships. And other countries which are not traditionally like apprenticeship countries, having system, they are also nowadays focusing on strengthening or establishing apprenticeship system. But then let's take a look. What is happening nowadays? The modern apprenticeship systems are not traditional ones. So they are adopting a new direction. For example, they are not only training people for blue-collar jobs, but also for emerging sectors such as digital and green economy, as well as services sector. Even universities in some countries have started offering apprenticeship programs, and apprenticeships are not longer confined to pre-employment training for young people. Adults and older people are also using it for reskilling and upskilling. No doubt, apprenticeships are an effective and efficient form of learning, yet many countries find it difficult to sustain a large-scale apprenticeship system. It is more complex than the school-based system. And the main reason is that more stakeholders are involved, in particularly bringing both the world of work and world of learning together and establishing effective partnership and synergy between them is the most challenging. But then it's possible. It's not that it's challenging there, but it's possible. So despite its significant benefits, as I've said just now, many countries, apprenticeships still carry a stigma, and many students do not want to join it. And also a large proportion of employers, particularly small and medium ones, do not offer apprenticeship training. So basic thing is that if apprenticeship training has to take place, both apprentices has to be there and employers has to be there to offer them. So both have to willingly participate. So when the ILO was started getting more and more requests from many countries, so then the member countries, which are 187 member countries of the ILO, they asked the office to develop a new standard. And the basic purpose of the new standard is that, yes, the importance of apprenticeship is growing in the context of future of work, but then the challenges are also faced by many countries in expanding quality apprenticeships. And then there is also a challenge how to ensure decent learning and working condition for apprentices so that the stigma is no longer there. So then they asked the office to start work on the standard setting process. So basically, the basic purpose of standard set will be that it will be proposing an enabling environment and a regulatory framework for the countries to ensure the quality and inclusiveness of apprenticeship programs, provide benefits and protection to both apprentices and enterprises, and enhance its attractiveness. So as part of the process, a white report on the framework of quality apprenticeship was published more than 1 year ago, and which had a questionnaire which was used by the countries to send their views and responses to us. Now we are preparing the next report, and that will be published by the end of January next year. And then after that, next year, June in 2022, the tripartite constituents, government, employers, and workers from 187 countries will together formulate a new standard, and that discussion will take place in 2 years, 2022 and 2023. Just for those who are not quite familiar with International Labour Conference, it is also known as the World Parliament for Labour. So we encourage the ILO because it's a joint. It's not only that some group of people can work together and bring best develop standards and practices. We encourage all of you and invite all of you to share your experiences and recommendations on how to promote quality apprenticeship across the globe. We also welcome information on good practices and tools. We are planning to set up a community practices and launch a massive open online course on apprenticeship next year. So thank you very much. I'm also copying, pasting in the chat a link. I will paste where you can access the reports and more information on apprenticeship resources from the ILO. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Ashwani, thank you so much, and we appreciate you sharing the resources. We appreciate the invite to get comment and participation in the upcoming International Labour Conference. I think it's very important to have this global standard that looks at the enabling environment, that looks at the link to decent work and the relationship between government, employers, learners, and labor, etc., practitioners. So very, very excited to be part of that. Let me move on now to Paul Warner. Paul, the AELP represents private providers. I know that it's not always an opportunity that we give to the provider side to give us a perspective. We'd be really keen to hear from you, the capability of private providers to deliver effective apprenticeships, and how can providers work effectively with governments, with public providers, with employers, etc. So, Paul, really looking forward to your contribution. Welcome.
Thank you, Nazreen, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our audience. The UK has been using apprenticeships for most of the last decade as the prime mechanism for driving growth in skills and productivity. Now, apprenticeships have always been recognised as effective in driving skills levels upwards, but since 2017, the UK has changed how they are funded, doubling the amount of money available to pay for their delivery by imposing a 0.5% levy on the payrolls of the largest companies in the country, reconfiguring the content of apprenticeships by putting the primary responsibility for their design on employers to ensure that the training meets the skills needs that their businesses actually have, and that this will impact positively and quickly on productivity. Now, apprenticeships in the UK are inextricably linked to employment. You must be in employment to follow an apprenticeship. After all, if you were to ask yourself, where have I learned the most about how to do my job? All of us must be honest and say that it wasn't sitting in a classroom learning about theory, it was about doing. It's about learning and applying the experiences, the lessons, and yes, even the mistakes that you make, and feeding that back into your overall expertise moving forward. Employers are, however, driven by their success in delivering their products, and therefore their training and skills requirements have to optimize this. Now, this is why independent training providers, or ITPs, as they're known in the UK, as non-state providers of technical and skills training, this is why they're so successful at delivering apprenticeships. ITPs can be any of a range of organisations, charities, limited companies, sole traders, multinationals, third sector organisations, and many more. 69% of all English apprenticeships are delivered by ITPs, and they are by far the most numerous tertiary institutions in the UK, comprising over 2/3 of the total. So despite being technically outside the further education sector, they are nevertheless an indispensable part of it. Now, this hasn't happened because policy deliberately promoted their involvement. It's happened because ITPs have shown themselves to be rapid responders to what employers and economies need. They're lean, they're efficient, they're economic, and they maintain high quality. The UK inspection body Ofsted last year reported 80% of the ITPs as providing good or outstanding provision, whilst 85% of employers and 86% of learners were satisfied with the overall quality of teaching and assessment that ITPs are providing. This is well in line with the average for state provision. This is because ITPs are underpinned by commercial drivers that align with those of the employers that they serve, more so than the drivers underpinning many formal educational establishments, which tend to concentrate on pedagogy and the needs of the individual learners. ITPs are therefore just like the companies they serve, and are therefore driven by the same considerations. ITPs are therefore closely tied to employers. They're appreciated by apprentices themselves, but they also work collaboratively with colleges and many others. The responsiveness of ITPs mean that they can fill gaps in provision, and they provide a specialist expertise in defined or niche areas that larger institutions, such as colleges or universities, can sometimes find difficult to effectively cover. Excellent collaborations between ITPs, colleges, universities, and others therefore exist everywhere, combining the excellent capital facilities that many of those institutions can offer with the commercial dynamism of the ITP sector to ensure that the apprenticeships deliver an effective and rounded learning experience that works for learners, employers, and indeed the economy of the country as a whole. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I very much hope that that's been of interest for you.
Absolutely, Paul. I think some of the key takeaways for me has been the findings by Ofsted, the absolute link to quality delivery. I think the focus on demand-led delivery and shaping the training to the needs of the economy are real good practice elements that we can take forward, and that our viewers and our audience sitting in Shanghai will be keen to learn more about, and I'm sure they can visit your website and unpack it, and you'll also share a few more details during the course of the morning. But building on what you've said, we now have a segue to our colleagues in Australia. So Cameron Baker is the Apprenticeships Commissioner in the state of Victoria. Gary Workman drives a group training organization representing over 2,400 employers. And we're really keen to hear from the both of you, understanding the perspective from the Asia Pacific region, understanding what the state of Victoria is doing to promote apprenticeships, and what are these innovative solutions that you're putting in place to drive the uptake of apprenticeships and ensure the quality of delivery. So over to you, Cameron and Gary. Thank you.
Thanks, Nazreen. The past 18 months have have changed the way many of our industries are working. But despite the disruption that's affected us all, I believe that there's a cloud in every silver lining. That silver lining for us in Victoria, within Australia, has been to take a fresh look at how we provide apprenticeships and traineeships. We've had the chance to identify and reach new target audiences. And in doing so, we will ensure that Victoria's huge pipeline of infrastructure has the necessary workers. Apprenticeships Victoria is a partnership between the state government, major project employers, and the TAFE and training system. A key target is to implement what we call the Big Build Apprenticeship Program. And this is a program that my organisation oversees and works with Gary quite closely, Gary's organisation with. So we have other important initiatives that also enable aspects of this program. But in total, the Victorian State Government is providing around $66 million worth of investment into driving apprenticeships and traineeship activity specifically to Victoria. The Big Build brand covers the major projects that will meet Victoria's population growth, and the title is certainly accurate. $80 billion of transport projects are being delivered, comprising of over 165 major road and rail schemes. These range from the Metro Tunnel project, which is Melbourne's first major train project since the City Loop, our original underground rail network was opened back in 1981, to the suburban rail loop, which will connect all our suburbs through metropolitan Melbourne and will take several decades to build. The North East Link will be, or will complete Melbourne's freeway system, and that nearly totals $16 billion. And that is one of our immediate key focuses for Apprenticeships Victoria. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day, and the transformation of modern Melbourne within being the capital of Victoria is very much a long-term proposition. To build these huge projects requires a considerable investment in people, and quite simply, we need to increase the number of apprentices and trainees to supply the workers we need to deliver these city-defining projects. That's the Apprenticeships Victoria target in brief. Within a couple of years, we will add up to 1,500 apprentices and trainees per annum to the workforce building these massive projects. This target also creates opportunities for people who have traditionally fallen outside the usual scope of apprenticeships and traineeships. These include women, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, so Indigenous Australians, refugees, asylum seekers, and people that come from culturally diverse backgrounds. And of course, the local community members from disadvantaged backgrounds as well. We're also opening the eyes of school leavers and their career paths and convincing them that perhaps an apprenticeship and traineeship is a more appropriate pathway than entering higher education and undertaking a degree. AV works closely with the Apprentice Employment Network and GUN Australia, so I'm handing over to Gary now, who will elaborate on this partnership further.
Thanks, Cameron. As Nazarene mentioned at the beginning, a lot of our members employ large numbers of apprentices across the state in industries traditionally known for their apprenticeship areas like electrical, plumbing, agriculture, but also in some new industries like digital and IT skills, business administration, and the healthcare sector. So our I guess, network of companies span right across the state and are able to provide entry-level opportunities for young people and build their careers through apprenticeships and traineeships. The partnership between us and the Victorian Government provides greater flexibility for host employers who may not have been in this space before, and it allows the apprentices to rotate to various jobs if needed because of the qualification or if there's a lack of work in a particular area. Our members are the legal employer of the apprentice, and they support the employers to recruit, train, mentor, and place additional apprentices into the workplace as needed. We're here to support people to get a leg up and to find a job, and to help apprentices who may find their placement challenging and being able to support new employers in this space as well. By working closely together, we enable apprentices to complete their rotations with other host employers over the 4 years of a traditional apprenticeship, receive support during any downtime, and other support and resources that they may need, and also develop new pre-apprenticeship pathways to, I guess, to make these industries a little bit more exciting and to make sure that employers are getting the skills that they need from day one. The world is changing really quickly, and the workforce is going to need to adapt in Australia. As Cameron mentioned, we've got a massive increase in infrastructure work, but we've also got other areas where we're trying to grow apprenticeships as well. So thank you, Nazarene, for your time, and thanks, Cameron.
Cameron, Gary, thank you so much for that. And I think what's fascinating is you're really shaping the design of the apprenticeship system in line with emerging trends in the economy, with this big build project. There has to be the economic incentive to grow the apprenticeship numbers. And I think the link to employment is so important. And if you can show an individual, a learner, that they have a pathway for at least the next 10, 20, 30 years, if they take this route, and they can develop their skills along the way, that's the key thing. And Cameron, you made the point about, career guidance, targeting youngsters in school. How do we map out these pathways and show that there's a long-term opportunity, it's viable, it's respectable, you're linked to what's happening in industry, and you're able to learn as industry demands are changing. That's the key message here, that apprenticeships are really a job for life, but you don't have to be stuck in the same job. You can grow, you can develop your own skills through work-based learning. Paul made the point about lifelong learning, on-the-job training, and I think these are the kinds of messages we want to get across. But also importantly, the role of employers, the need for partnership, and an excellent example of how the public and private sector are genuinely working together. So thank you both for your input. I'm really, really pleased to see what's happening, and good luck with the reconfiguration of the state of Victoria and a new Melbourne that's going to come in some years to come. So thank you both, and over to Megan. Megan, you've been very active in Island Skills and TU Dublin. You've been promoting apprenticeships, not just to young people, but also to women. So we want to hear from your experience in the logistics sector. We had a good laugh just before we started that it's been opening doors in many places for you, not just in industry, but also in your social life. So tell us a little bit about your personal experiences. What alliances have you been busy with on a national and international level, and how can these be strengthened? Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Nazarene, for the lovely introduction, and thank you all for having me here today. It's great to be able to elaborate and build on what everybody has already previously said, because it's all so relevant no matter where you are in the world and at what stage, whether you're at industry level, educational level, or at youth level. It's so relevant. And I think from my experience, having worked, I didn't have the opportunity to come through a traditional apprenticeship path, and that stems back to, as was said earlier, about the apprenticeships having the negative image and negative stereotype associated with them. So for so long, it wasn't an opportunity that was really highlighted to young people. There was a stigma attached to those who did take an apprenticeship route, and it was like the lesser option for those who wouldn't make it through university level. And even right up until I was going through school and finishing up my school levels, it was still at a point where it was frowned upon, and so much so in Ireland that the secondary schools are graded based on the percentage of students they get into university. So it became like a race for schools to only promote university level courses to their students. But now, in a changing world, and having seen what other countries have done with apprenticeships and the doors it has unlocked and the opportunities it has given and helped the industries to plug the skills gaps, there's definitely a huge changing mindset now, but only coming through to the older school level generation. I think that's why we here in Ireland are trying to do an awful lot more with the younger school level children, to be able to promote apprenticeships and show that it is just as much a viable option as going to university. And if not, an even more viable option, as we spoke about earlier, the most that you will ever learn is going to be in the real world. I remember the shock reality I got coming from school and learning everything it says in the textbooks, and then going out to work in the likes of DHL and Lidl and working in freight forwarding and logistics and realizing it never goes by the book. If it did, sure, we'd all have an easy life, but unfortunately, we don't have it that way. And given the last year that we've had with COVID, I think it's really highlighted how agile we need to be, especially with our learning and training and development, because jobs aren't for life anymore. It's not a traditional route of leaving school, picking up a trade and seeing that out until retirement. Many people of a younger generation now, they're constantly looking for new challenges. They're looking to use their soft skills to adapt into different industries and try different opportunities. So I think it's so vital that within the apprenticeships that there is that development on not just the technical skills, but the soft skills, so that those students and those learners then are able to adapt as they change career throughout their life. I think in Ireland, it's been great for us to be able to work with the different networks and the different alliances to help build and develop our apprenticeships to bring them up to the level where they need to be. Obviously, logistics and freight forwarding, as everybody will be aware, is an industry that's under severe pressure at the moment, not only just here in Europe, but globally with a shortage of skilled workers. And I think the apprenticeships that we've built here and are being built across the globe are helping to address those gaps, especially from encouraging women into the industry, which is one that we've struggled with for many years. I still get people giving me strange looks when I say I work in logistics and freight forwarding, and they still assume that I'm driving a truck or I'm working in a warehouse pulling pallets. I think raising awareness of what opportunities are out there to young people is what we need to be doing. And I think as well, it comes down to the employers playing their part. While employers are always great at signing up to apprenticeships and they want to bring in those skilled workers, I think there's still a part to be played from employers on promoting those opportunities and being the leaders as well, with showing that they are very much encouraging taking on apprentices and adding to their workforce, knowing that those apprenticeships are building very skilled workers that will help with the workforce. So I think there's lots of exciting things to be done, and it's been great learning from everybody here. So thank you.
Fantastic, Megan. Thank you so much for that. And I know you're going to enjoy the last few months that you have with your gold medal. Well, at least you get to keep it, but you'll hand over the title to someone else. But we're really, really pleased to see, the first-hand perspective, your personal experience with the stigma, combating that stigma, proving to many people the right decision. And I think what's key from your message is the role of employers, the need for quality work-based learning, the opportunity to apply your theoretical skills in the real world means that you have to be in a workplace, you have to hone that knowledge and build those skills, the need for mentors in the workplace who can guide you along. And I'm sure you yourself have become a mentor and a coach by now, having been in the industry a few years. I really like the link between those core skills and the technical skills, the problem solving, the teamwork, the communication skills. Those are so critical to successful collaboration and active participation in the workplace. So thank you for raising that. I think what was also key is this need to start the career guidance at a much earlier level in the school outreach. It shouldn't be to school leavers. It should be to, and I know in Switzerland, for example, by the time learners are 12 or 13 years old, they're already listening to people from the local industries explaining what's happening, the developments. How do we build that more systemically into the actual school curriculum is a challenge that we must take away from the conversation. So Megan, thank you very much. We'll come back to you shortly. We're going to quickly go over to our video from Costa Rica, and Maria Dalmar will be sharing the work that they're doing. So if our colleagues in the technical team can play the video, we'll be keen to see it. Thank you.
And now over to Maria Del Mar, the coordinator for the Global Apprenticeship Network in Costa Rica. Maria works very closely with the Business Confederation in the country, as well as employers in the GAN network. We're very keen to hear and experience from the Latin American partners, and we look forward to your contribution today, Maria. Maria, can you give us some background to the dual education law that was introduced in Costa Rica in 2019? We understand that it's going to bring dual vocational education and training into the mainstream education system. And we'd like to understand how the law is progressing, what has been the role of the GAN network in rolling out the legislation, and the interest from employers. Over to you.
Thanks, Narvin, and hello to all the audience. Well, yes, the dual education law was approved. The country needs to create an adequate environment to its implementation, including intensive trainings to policymakers and continued social dialogue. Actually, GAN Costa Rica represents the private sector in one of these dialogues, that is the National Technical Committee. This committee aims to create a proposal for a national level strategy to operationalize the various actors in charge of implementing the dual education systems. And thanks to our participation here, and since this topic is relatively new in our country, at the beginning of this year, and with the collaboration of you, GAN Global, we made an alliance with the Swiss Federal Institute for Vocational Educational Training to explain to the policymakers in Costa Rica the lessons learned in the Swiss model, for example.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that explanation. Really interesting to see the cooperation and the need for partnership in implementing legislation. So very, very interesting. My second question to you is around the role that vocational education and training plays in addressing key challenges, such as youth unemployment, productivity, innovation in business. And I'd like to hear from you how you think business, the private sector, and our vocational and education training providers can actually collaborate to improve the quality of education and training, and how to make vocational education, apprenticeships, traineeships, and the like, an attractive pathway, mainly for young people.
Sure, Narvin. Well, the new law on dual education in Costa Rica opens a huge space for collaborative work between the education sector and the private sector. For example, we have that in one hand, according to this law, companies must indicate which programs they want to be taught under the dual education. And in the other hand, the law established that the entity in charge of coordinating all the dual education system in Costa Rica is the National Apprenticeship Institute, or INA, which is part of the government. So the dual education center that we create at GAN Costa Rica will help them in this process. How? Well, the principal objective of the center is to work with the private sector to define the demand for dual education programs. To do this, the business sector needs to identify human talent needs, define the professional profiles to develop the dual programs, implement the programs. So the National Educational Institute, or INA, doesn't have enough experience working with the business sector, nor the capacity to process all the information, provide feedback, and respond in a relevant time frame. Thus, the Costa Rican Union of Chambers and Associations of the Private Business Sector, or UCAEP, through GAN Costa Rica, sought to facilitate and streamline this process for the business sector, to ensure that more companies are part of this model, and in this way to create job opportunities for vulnerable youth and address their human talent needs.
Great, Maria. Thank you so much for that. I think your answers have really demonstrated the need and the value for alliances and partnerships at the heart of the theme for this discussion, and really interesting to see the very practical role that employers and other partners and stakeholders in the system need to play in order to improve the quality of training, and ensuring that all stakeholders can engage meaningfully in the system. Thank you very much, Maria, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you to Maria, and I'm sure you found her responses quite interesting, very practical in nature, and demonstrating the role of employers in delivering on policy. Now, I'm going to move to our speakers to present closing remarks. Time has moved very quickly, and we do have to stop at 11. So I'm going to move over to Norbert first. And Norbert, you know, in summarizing, perhaps you want to reflect on what the European Commission can be doing better, or it can build on, given the current state of alliances and the commitment to quality apprenticeship. So Norbert, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I think first of all, for the audience to understand, we in the Commission, we have not the competence for education training, it's within the member states. And we also need to respect the principle of the autonomy of social partners, which I think is very important, because social partners, employers and trade unions can really play a key role, and they should play a key role, because they know best what the needs are in their sector. But at the same time, what we can do is to promote and to learn from each other in these alliances. For me, I would say 4 points. For me, the most important, that you involve all key stakeholders, that nobody feels excluded. Second, that they feel the ownership. So it's not, you cannot do it top down. They all need to be important and contribute to it. So that is for me very important. Third, particularly if we look at local and regional, I mean, region in our sense means subnational, like Tuscany or Basque Country, just to understand for the audience, not the regions at global level. Of course, they need to look beyond their borders. We live in one world, and you cannot just be isolated, do something at your local community. That will not work. And we can really learn a lot from each other. I just want to show you one example where we have done a report on 20 guiding principles, and the Chinese have asked us to translate it into Chinese. Of course, that is exactly what I think when we do something, let's learn from each other. I think that's very important. And last but not least, I very much appreciated the contribution from Megan, because we need to listen to the learners. They know best what is needed in what we call twin transition. The future is about digital and green. And these are the young people. They know best what ideas they have. Let me just do a last concluding sentence, because we talk so much, so many years about apprenticeship. I think we know the ingredients. We also know the recipes, how to make it successful. So all we need is to make it happen. And I thought about myself. If I were young, I would most probably become a pastry cook. And I think we should now prepare the cake, maybe a moon cake, and put it in the oven and enjoy it together. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Norbert. Thank you so much. And I liked those 4 points. You've done my job to summarize. So I'm gonna take from your 4 points, but by the time I get to my concluding remarks this morning, and absolutely, we do know what the ingredients are. We know what the problem is. We know the solutions. We just need to collaborate now and work effectively in our alliances and partnerships. Thank you very much. Ashwani, perhaps in your closing remarks, you want to highlight one best practice that you think we can share, and perhaps what the ILO is going to do to drive this agenda forward.
Thank you, Nazreen. Let me share, because it is always said that apprenticeships can be more suitable for the developed countries or the countries which have a large proportion of enterprises in the formal economy or big companies. Let me share one example from a very low-income country or the developing country, where there was apprenticeship for non-existent completely till 5 years or 6 years ago. And they had the same challenge. And this country has now become, it has shown excellent leadership and excellent outstanding performance, that most countries in Africa are going there, doing study visit, learning from them, and then they're also establishing apprenticeship in their own countries. And the country's name is Tanzania. And very interestingly, even though it's a low-income country, when they started apprenticeship, they started with a different approach. They said, they will start apprenticeship at a higher level. So they first targeted 5- and 4-star hotels. And the hotel said, we don't want typical wet level qualification. Create something senior level for us. With the success of that one, the university, the first example there, that university adopted the program. And when it adopted, the next year, the best university student declared was an apprentice. And that was a girl also. And now what they are doing very innovatively, at the bachelor's level in the university, they are starting apprenticeship, have already started programs in banking, insurance, and even water sector. So they're targeting green economy also, and all the sectors which are the growing jobs are there, and also interest the candidates. So my purpose of saying is that it is possible, apprenticeship are possible in every circumstances, but no single model of apprenticeship will work in every country. It has to be developed based on the conditions of the country. All the stakeholders have to come together. There's a big role change of the government is required. Typically, in most countries, government role is just like setting the laws and regulations, but then beyond that, they don't go. I think then they leave it to the employers to do all the cost sharing and everything. It has to go beyond that one. Very clearly, it has to go beyond that. There are some studies which have shown that it immensely benefits the government. Even, for example, one study in USA says for $1 in university, the return to the government was $36 over the period of the time. So they have to invest. They have to set up the enabling environment which facilitates, including both financial and non-financial incentives. It's not a one shot. It's become based on the context. So, but point is that bringing social partners together and setting up enabling environment and facilitating is most important for the governments to do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Ashwani, you've set the scene for the tools conversation that will follow in a little while, this enabling environment and how we can move to that. So I'm very pleased for your contribution, and we'll see you in a little bit in the next panel. Paul, in about 1 minute, I'm going to give you a hard task to summarize, how can independent providers collaborate and build partnerships, and how can we take the excellent examples from the UK into other countries?
As Ashwani said, you can't necessarily just take a system from one country, transplant it to another and expect it to work. But I do genuinely think that the UK system and the English system of apprenticeships in particular has got a lot to offer to the world in terms of the lessons that we've learned about employer engagement and making skills training work as a part of overall industrial and economic strategies. And key to that is what works. And it's about letting independents in particular do what they do best within an overall framework of what the system's trying to achieve. There's a lot more I could say on this, but I know time's run away with us. We would be delighted to speak to delegates further if they'd be interested to find out more. So do please visit our website or contact us. And it would, of course, be great to even meet people in person as the pandemic eases, and perhaps we can find ourselves able to visit each other's countries a little bit more freely to see what we have to offer.
Thank you, Paul. And I think, you've been very polite in how you've put it, but, the need to remove bureaucracy and over-policing of providers while maintaining the need for quality means that, you can be a little bit more innovative. You can shape curricula with agility and flexibility and speed. And I think that's where private providers have a little bit more space and room to innovate compared to the public system, and we can learn some lessons from that. So looking forward to further engagement with you and your team, and we welcome the invitation that you've made to the audience. So thank you. Cameron and Gary, what are some quick wins that you can see to get more employers involved in the delivery of apprenticeships and the creation of opportunities for training and for job creation, that learning to earning approach?
Thanks, Nazarene. One of the programs we're running at the moment with support from Cameron's department is trying to increase the awareness and attraction of apprenticeships for young women. The state government are funding 10 different programs, and in Australia, traditionally we've had very low numbers of women in the traditional trade areas. Our program is aimed specifically at trying to give young women an opportunity to try multiple industries in a safe environment. All of it's a hands-on experience, so they actually get to feel what those trades look like, and then rotate them through various employers for work experience so they can make a more informed choice about what their next move is going to be. And employers will actually get the opportunity to try multiple young people and try and get the best fit for their business before they actually commit to an apprenticeship. So we think programs like this are going to help bring more employers to the system, bring more young people to the system. It's a safe environment for them to try multiple things, and then they make a more informed choice about their next steps. So hopefully that leads to stronger completion rates as well. I'll hand over to Cam there because I know he wants to also talk about something that the state government have been doing.
Exactly to Gary's point too about the low representation of women in what we call traditional trade areas in Australia. It's running at just under 3%. So there is just so much more that we need to do. And Nazreen, to the point you made about, I think we were implying before about there's a compulsion there for major constructors to employ apprentices and trainees as well. So we have the benefit of a state government program called the Major Project Skills Guarantee, where the 10% of the total workforce needs to comprise of apprentices, trainees and cadets. So with that type of state-driven incentive, that commercial invitational edge, if you will, that is really driving apprenticeship and traineeship activity specifically in the major project space. So it makes our job a little bit easier, but only a little bit. There's a lot more that we need to do.
Thanks, Gary and Cameron. And Cameron, I think that last point that you made about the need to incentivize, the need to put in some carrots in the system is important. You know, we need to ensure that partners feel that there's a benefit for them as well, and that the learner has a benefit, the employer gets a benefit. And this discussion on incentives is an important one. It can take a whole day in the next conference, maybe. Next year in Shanghai, we'll include it. But it is important around encouraging the partners to actively get involved. And Maria said something similar about the role of the employer network and the coalition that they've got going in Costa Rica. So thank you so much for that. Megan, some final thoughts from you. What do you wish the stakeholders would do, and how can they support young women? It's fantastic to hear what's happening in Australia. How do we take that to scale?
I think what I could say to everybody is, and it's already been mentioned, is I think it's the whole fact of working together, as you say, breaking down that bureaucracy. When a country has a good idea, while it can't be implemented directly, maybe from one to another, we can definitely share our ideas. There's no point in one country hiding all the good ideas, as has happened in the past in many different ways. But I think it's us all coming together to share all our different experiences, all our different knowledge, and having those opportunities so that in each country we can bring the best fit back to our own organizations and our own shareholders and stakeholders, and we can help then create this global network of very skilled workers and apprentices. I have to say, I'd be so excited to see how the new program goes in Australia there. I think bringing in, especially women, giving them the opportunity to try before they kind of commit to following one particular apprenticeship is a brilliant idea, and definitely something I'll have picked up on now and be bringing back. I think it's great. I think a lot of people can be often put off an opportunity because they don't know enough about it, or they don't feel it might be a right fit for them. So it's definitely a great idea, and I'm definitely excited to see what we all go on to do in the future and to keep in touch with everybody and work together.
Thank you, Megan. I'm really, really pleased for the kind of input each of our speakers have given us. We have 1 minute before we close, and I want to summarize 4 key points that I found from today's discussion. The need for policy advocacy and shaping policy in line with your stakeholders, and the need to deliver and create these systems that are enabling. The need for private sector leadership and public sector cooperation and partnership. The need for peer-to-peer learning. It's essential that we share good and best practice. And then finally, to practically implement initiatives to showcase how we can grow apprenticeship training and deliver quality learning and create opportunities for employment. Thank you all for our session today, for your active participation. There is a comment in the Q&A, so if any of our speakers would like to have a look at it, we will answer via email after the session. And I look forward to welcoming you to the next session in 15 minutes. Thank you very much and goodbye.